So here we are again. Thank you everyone for joining us today. I am Toba, I use they them pronouns. I am a DJ, music producer, Ecology of Care curator and co-founder. I am late diagnosed with ADHD, which explains maybe why I do all these things on top of a full-time work, and I have potential suspicion about other parts of neurodiversity for myself, but yeah, not diagnosed yet, maybe never, because self-diagnose is maybe something we'll talk at some point during this panel, and it's really something that happens for the neurodiverse community. Today, with Luz, who is on stage as well, we represent Ecology of Care, which we founded together with another friend, Zara, who cannot be with us this year, sadly. And about Ecology of Care, we are a Neuroqueer collective and an ongoing event series centered around community care, harm reduction, mental health, and neurodiversity, mostly in the context of nightlife, but not only. And today we decided actually to have a discussion together, because with the topic that Unsound has picked, DADA, with an absurdist view on AI, we wanted to bring maybe a view on AI that is not the most popular one within the, within the community that has access to it and who is building it, like the usual white cis straight man. And yeah, we wanted to bring something a bit different, another perspective, and talk about this technology with our own lens, which is the Neuroqueer lens. Little information also about this panel. It's a hybrid one with a lot of pre-recorded content. We have about 50 minutes of video that will be played at some point. We definitely know that it's not a format that works for everyone, so if at some point it's too much for you, you need a break or anything, we won't take it badly if you decide to leave the room. But yeah, that's about it. We will have a Q&A also at the end of the session, but that is for later. I will stop talking now and we'll pass the mic to Luz.
Hi everyone, thanks for being there with us today. So my name is Luz. I'm a Neuroqueer DJ, promoter, curator. I co-founded a Berlin-based queer collective, Room for Resistance, and Ecology of Care with Toba and Zara. And I'm also late diagnosed ADHD, which stands for the combo of autism and ADHD.
Yes, and we have Agat. Welcome.
Hello. My name is Agat. I use they them pronouns. In Polish that's ono jego. And I'm like a quarter of Neuroqueer collective, Polish collective. My comrade Yara is here in the audience, and we founded the collective 2 years ago, and we are focused on helping, supporting the LGBT but queer community that is also neurodivergent. Yeah.
Yes, thank you very much. Do you want to add anything or no?
Not for now.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. Also, before starting this panel, let's call it this way, we have compiled some words that we would like to define together, because as much as I have the feeling that talking about neurodiversity at the moment is a bit of a thing in the music and art scene, there are still words that are maybe unknown, and because we want you to know what we talk about, we have prepared some definitions, and again, I will pass the mic to Luz for that.
Yeah, so the first word we want to introduce is neurodiversity, which is a proposed framework that argues there is intrinsic diversity in human brain function and cognition, and that certain things currently classified as mental disorders are differences and disabilities, but are not necessarily pathological.
And within neurodiversity, we have actually two words that are very important. The first one being neurotypical, and as opposed to it, we have neurodivergence. Neurotypical is what a lot of people would call, quote unquote, and please never use this word, but normal. But that's not the case. Actually, neurotypical is the word that we use to describe individuals with typical neurological development or functioning. In other words, it's not used to describe individuals who are on the autistic spectrum, on the ADHD spectrum, etc., etc. And then, as opposed to this word, because we live in a society, obviously, that is imposing neurotypicality on us, the way people call us is neurodivergent. And that's everyone who is considered outside of the typical spectrum, aka people with autism, people with ADHD, dyslexia, dyspraxia, bipolar, OCD, Tourette syndromes, etc., etc. What I say about this word neurodivergence is also like something where there is not one point of view. Some people who are actually on the from the neurodiverse community would argue that actually it's totally fine to call that a divergence. Personally, because I think the word, and we agree also within Ecology of Care, the fact that this word is like heavily, it has a heavy impact to say divergence. It really sounds like something that doesn't sound right to our ears. So even though we normally are not diverse as individual, we also use the word neurodiverse to talk about specific individual, while normally neurodiverse is only a word that we should use for an entire community or a group of people. So yeah, this is how we interact with these terms within Ecology of Care. So don't quote us on that, but at least you have our perspective.
And I will introduce the term neuroqueer and neuroqueering. The term was recently coined by Nick Walker and Athena Lynn Michaels Dillon. According to Nick Walker, a neuroqueer individual is any individual whose identity, selfhood, gender performance, and/or neurocognitive style have in some way been shaped by their engagement in practices of neuroqueering, regardless of what gender, sexual orientation, or style of neurocognitive functioning they may have been born with. And Nick Walker originally conceived the concept of neuroqueer as a verb, neuroqueering as a practice of queering, subverting, defying, disrupting, liberating oneself from neuronormativity and heteronormativity simultaneously. It's an extension of the way queer is used as a verb in queer theory.
Yeah, and we go with this word potentially back to the roots of what queer means. It's always interesting to talk with older people from the UK, and you use the word queer, and all of a sudden they're like, oh, what are you, that's word, no, that's so bad. But obviously, yes, we reclaim it for sure. That's what we like to do. And as opposed to going back to the roots, there is also a way to, move forward and look at the future. And that's the last term we can kind of introduce right now, which is Neurofuturism. And I won't spend a lot of time defining these words because actually two of the people who we have invited for pre-recorded interviews will talk at length about this term, namely David Gray-Hammond and Yonah W. And I think it's the perfect moment for me to slowly move towards the presentation of the guests we have interviewed before. There are three people. The first one is David Gray-Hammond, and he will actually define with us what neurofuturism means, at least for him, and he will tell us how each and everyone can actually neuroqueer their life, their minds. That's something that actually every one of you in this room can do, and you will understand that better with David. Then we have actually Yonah W, and they will bring their expertise on how these new technologies that we are talking about are harmful towards marginalized communities, the Neuroqueer community, but not only. Let's not forget that obviously AI is highly biased regarding, racism and so on and so forth. I won't make the list. And the great thing is they will also dive into the neurodiversity and accessibility technology movements, bringing some kind of first answers and solutions to these issues. And finally, we met with Pelonomi Moiloa, and she will talk about how these technologies replicate actually the extractive colonial history of the African continent. And she actually will talk about the solutions that she works on with a company that she has founded, Lilapa AI. I really love the tagline of Lilapa AI that is saying AI for Africans, by Africans, solving Africans' problems. So yeah, that's the three online panelists that we have, if I can call them this way. We will disappear from stage. We have a video that will be now playing for about 50 minutes. As I said, if you feel like you want to move, you want to go out, you want to come back, feel free to do so. We really aim afterwards to also share the video, most probably on YouTube, so it will be accessible. Yeah. We start now.
I'm David Gray-Hammond. I'm an autistic ADHD and schizophrenic author living on the south coast of England. I do a lot of writing and sort of exploration around neuroqueer theory, neurofuturism. Academically, I also have a research-based interest in autistic people and substance use. And I've written 2 full-length books. One is called The New Normal, Autistic Musings on the Threat of a Broken Society, and Unusual Medicine, Essays on Autistic Identity and Drug Addiction, which both of them include themes of neuroqueer theory and some of the expansions I've made myself on neuroqueer theory, such as that in my chat book, A Treatise on Chaos. So yeah, I'm all about the neuroqueer theory. Oh, and my pronouns are he, they.
Hi, David. Thanks for joining us today. So the idea for this panel came to us by reading several texts on your blog called Emergent Divergence, particularly one entitled Reclaiming Neurofuturism, an Introduction. We were particularly inspired by this concept of reclaiming neurofuturism through a neuroqueer critical lens. Could you please tell us more about this concept and what it means to you? And could you also explain how it's connected to the development of AI and new technologies?
So, neurofuturism has sort of been understood largely so far as being about augmenting human neurology with technology, artificial intelligence, really pushing towards that point of the singularity and, connecting the human mind to computer systems. But for me, neurofuturism is more than that. And I think what led me to that was neuroqueer theory and this understanding that we can break free of the identity politics that exist around one's neurological cognitive style and instead embrace the infinite possibility of a mind that can change with each and every interaction it has with the world. So for me, neurofuturism is really anything that looks towards the future of human neurology. And I'm particularly interested in this as someone who exists within a world of neurodiversity studies because the autistic community has done a lot to learn about what it means to be autistic and some of the basics, but I like to go further than that and realize that one can queer their neurology. So even if you're neurotypical, you could, through various means, queer your neurology to become neurodivergent. And this is really important for me because what it taught me was that we don't have to be contained by other people's ideas of what our brain is capable of. And so it showed me that we don't have to say, well, the only way to advance the human brain is through computer technology. We don't have to say the only way to advance the human brain is through understanding philosophy. We can influence the future of humans' neurological development through every single interaction that we have with the environment we exist within.
Thank you so much for that. And then kind of tying this back to the whole AI and other emerging technologies thing, what makes these emerging technologies potentially or probably most likely harmful to neurodiverse and neuroqueer people? And how is there a parallel to the forced medicalization that neurodiverse people often experience in the psychiatric industrial complex?
Well, first of all, I would highlight the fact that a lot of artificial intelligence technology, a lot of computer technology that is being designed for, interfacing with the human body mind, I think it tends to come from this position that the human body mind is a fixed point. We come to it in a place and we have reached perhaps the peak of our development that's possible without the technology. But as I explore in my own ideas around the chaotic self in my chapbook, A Treatise on Chaos, who we are at our core, the self, is constantly changing, and every interaction we have, every conversation we have, every way we process the environment changes not just the self, but fundamentally the way our brain works. And this is problematic because when we have AI technology that is looking to interface with the human brain, it's designed with these very fixed ideas again around what neurodivergent is, what neurotypical is. And the thing is you can't unqueer a queer mind. So a neurotypical could queer their neurology towards neurodivergence, but a neurodivergent person couldn't queer their way into neurotypicality. You can only further queer the human mind. And so what is really significant to remember is that, there are certain actors out there in the field of AI technology who are talking about microchips that could cure autism. And as I said, that's not possible. You might be able to augment the human brain in a way that they don't present as autistic, but you can't unqueer that queer mind. And so that's the first issue, really, with AI technology, is that sometimes it's being positioned as something that inadvertently pathologizes the neurodivergent experience. But this is interesting because you have to consider that a lot of autistic people experience forced medicalization. In fact, neurodivergent people in general experience a lot of forced medicalization. You have to be diagnosed autistic, you have to be diagnosed ADHD, you have to be diagnosed schizophrenic. All of these things require you to engage with a psychiatrist and to enter the medical system. Some of these require you to be treated with medicines that may not be particularly pleasant. And of course, this is the root of the problem, is certain aspects of human experience we've been told that it means the human is broken, that something is wrong and needs to be fixed. When actually, I think, we need to look more at the environments around us and how they are impacting on the way we interact with and process the world. So my biggest concern is that if we develop AI technology that can interface with the human brain, who is regulating how that is applied to us? Is that going to be used as like a proxy for forced medicalization? Okay, well, we're not medicating you anymore, but you do have to interface with this computer system that's going to change the way that you process and experience the world. And I think that's a really dangerous thing. And it leads on to these ethical questions of, just how much of the human mind can you alter, and who decides who can alter what? Because many autistic people, for example, will tell you they don't want their mind altered. Not because they see being autistic as this wonderful thing that has no bad sides. In fact, neurodivergence in general is accepted as a neutral state of being. It's not good, it's not bad, it's just what it is. But unfortunately, there's this great deal of attitudes around neurodivergence that it is just basically being a broken neurotypical, and that's wrong. And you know, when you start to understand the world through a neuroqueer lens, you start to see the prevailing neuronormativity in society. So, you know, neuronormativity being this idea that there is this correct way of thinking or feeling or acting or embodying your own experience. And because of this neuronormativity, there's a risk that AI technologies designed could be influenced by that. So I do really believe that, you know, in the development of AI technology, particularly anything that's going to interface with the human mind, it needs input from minority communities. It needs input from autistic people, ADHD people, schizophrenic people. It needs input from Black people. It needs input from gay people. You know, if there is a minority group that exists, they need to have an influence on the development of this technology because they have a right to use technology the way that works for them. And my biggest fear is that this technology could become another way of forcing people into those neuronormative standards.
Okay, it can sound good. It sounds bad, and clearly, like, we don't want to be pushed into this neuronormativity. Clearly, we need to have a seat at the table and talk about all of this. But even wider, what would be your hope? What should be the goals for these technologies in your sense? Like, what would make these technologies, quote unquote, acceptable for all these marginalized communities, and what would make it a real powerful tool instead of something that that would be alienating us even more?
So, in particular, with neurodivergent communities, when we take them as a minority group, there's a concept from Nick Walker's book, Neuroqueer Heresies, and she writes about something called neurocosmopolitanism. So, this idea of a cosmopolitan society where no one group has privilege over another. So, we're talking a level of equity here, you know, so not necessarily equality, because sometimes that can be applied incorrectly, but we're talking about a true cosmopolitanism. So if a person needs adaptations and accommodations within their environment, then those are provided. And obviously that comes on the understanding that some people will need more, some people will need less in order to have equal access to the environment. But when it comes to this kind of technology, we need to be working towards a neuro-cosmopolitan society before it becomes an entrenched part of our society. Because if we live in a society that already privileges a few above many others, then the technology that's going to evolve risks becoming a tool of that privilege. It risks becoming a tool of that normativity. And so we really need technology as it's been being designed. We need people to stop and think, am I reinforcing privileges that already exist? Is this going to disadvantage a particular group? Does the purpose and function of this technology really serve the majority, or is it serving a great deal less than the majority?
Absolutely. And these are just questions that we are going to continue to ask throughout this panel, and we should all just be asking in our day-to-day lives, especially in the coming years, which are just going to be so vital and pivotal as these technologies kind of, whether we want to or not, shape our daily lives.
My name is Yonah W, and I'm truly proactive, being both entrepreneur, technology advocate, but also artist and curator. So from technology side, I manage portfolios of startups related to AI for assistive technology, robotics, mostly focused on cognitive disabilities, neurodiversity, dyslexia. Also, I work with the European Commission evaluating projects and suggesting different type of new policies, better frameworks, and also I curate festivals, summits, different type of projects, cultural things in order to bring more awareness to all of this mission.
Well, it's really impressive, and thank you so much for your vital work. As a disability advocate, you actually raised a lot of attention on the neuro exclusion crisis in AI and new emerging technologies. Could you tell us what's the neuro exclusion crisis? And we also heard about movements in technology such as neurodiversity and accessibility movements and social and human AI centered. Or you talk also about, in your UNESCO presentation that you shared with us, you talked about disability centered AI ecosystem. Could you also tell us what are these movements and concepts, and if, according to you, they were created as a response to the neuro exclusion crisis and the lack of technology, the lack of access in technology?
Yes. So first of all, there's a term called neurodiversity, which relates to a highly functional spectrum of autism. And it's not completely my work. My work is slightly broader, and it's more focused on more severe conditions, not so functional autism, mental health conditions, neurological disabilities, which led to cognitive impairments when people are not able to properly socialize, participate in education process, workforce. And basically, typically, I recognize at least few groups. One are people with a severe mental health disorders, people with the autism spectrum disorders, and people with the neurological conditions similar to multiple sclerosis. So my work is slightly broader. In terms of exclusion, there are two levels. So on one hand, these groups of people were historically excluded from society on the level of education and the level of workforce, and the number is close to 85% for this group. So they're not employed full time, or they have a low income positions, or they have no good access to education. Also, only 10% of them have access to truly affordable assistive technology. Also, they very frequently face difficulties. Then they talk to police, security guards, because they're not able to properly recognize these issues. Then they're not visible because these disabilities, in most cases, invisible, and that's the biggest challenge. And the second level is how technology can discriminate against these people. So before talking about discrimination, I would love to underline that if done properly, technology brings a lot of promise to these groups. And for instance, AI and robotics empower a lot of accessibility technologies, social robotics, smart assistants, tools which help to turn the speech into text, or pictures into text, so different type of formats which help to support people with sensory or cognitive disabilities. But at the same time, due to these social issues, people who behind the algorithms, people who behind the policy and adoption, and unfortunately, they bring the bias, limiting the selection of people who participate in research, or since the existing data sets and statistics do not include these people, the machines learning for this statistic, once again, are not really efficient towards these groups. And that's why, for instance, facial recognition or speech recognition system can't properly recognize different type of speech patterns, or people with the facial impairments, or people with the different cognitive patterns. So, for instance, I personally was blocked by social networks which told me, your pattern of actions and views looks suspicious. It seems like you use some automated tools. I never used them. So sometimes you click too fast if you have a tremor in your hand or something like that. And systems are not able to distinguish, for instance, automated tools or just some neurological conditions. And the same from different type of impairments. The same with the documents, screening, or hiring tools. So unfortunately, this bias exists. But once again, I would love to underline that bias behind this problem is mostly social. So it's not a problem of technology or the systems. It's more about the people who provide the research. It's about the existing statistic. It's about accessible medical support, education, work opportunities. So everyone is presented in this research. So we're able to bring actual justice to these groups.
And to come back to these movements, did you like these movements, like the neurodiversity or accessibility movements, are like these movements that work to raise attention to these issues?
Not only bring attention, because there's a lot of attention, there is a lack of solutions. So basically, my work is focused on three main levels. First is the actual building of technologies in this field, supporting startups which address this problem. And I'm working in the United States, in Europe, in Middle East, connecting different innovators in this field. And I'm also we're behind a few companies who build AI for dyslexia, AI for autism, different type of dashboards for caregivers, for children, is the first thing. Second thing is actual adoption and bringing these technologies to the market and make it accessible. So here I work both with the projects, companies, and sometimes through European Commission funded programs, helping to adopt some of these technologies in schools, in some medical centers or institutions. So it's a second level. And third level is actually mass cultural projects. Last year, we curated one of the world's biggest AI summits in Saudi Arabia, where the whole idea of AI museum was inspired by idea of neurodiversity. So, and we brought people around the world. We brought startups building robots for neurodiversity there and show these companies to investors. So it's not about just awareness. It's actually building the ecosystem for these people, showing them as role models, showing the solutions, show them interesting form of art, creativity, which embrace this type of impairments or differences.
Yes, I think also you potentially have answered one of the questions I had, which is giving examples of how these technologies can be helpful for neurodiverse people, but also some people with disability, etc. That being said, reading some of the material you shared with us before the interview, I realized that 10% of the population only currently have access to these assistive technologies. What would you think would be helpful? How could we make this new technology more accessible to those who are in need in the future?
It's a very good question. Around 6 months ago, we had a session with the OECD, and is a multilateral organization pushing economic development and the future of labor and workforce. And we basically raised this exact question, and we work on open repository of assistive technologies, but also report which showing existing challenges and solutions. This report will be published in October. So all of the stakeholders, on one hand, will see all of the existing assistive technologies. Second, everyone will be aware regarding existing challenges, market access, adoption, how it's used by caregivers, by end users, and help to build further solutions, including all of this level. So I'm truly waiting for this change. And I'm doing the same thing with the World Health Organization, with the UNESCO. So with the World Health Organization, we cooperated on a report called Generative AI and Healthcare, where I added the article focused on disability, and the same with UNESCO. So my goal is to create this open source frameworks, so every stakeholders are aware, they know about these technologies, like exact list, how you can use them, how you could help them, how you could bring them to the market, to the school, to the families, to educators. So that's the strategy.
So now we have covered, I think, the positive aspect of these technologies. You also covered the question of biases that is underlying these technologies. But aside of that, do you see any risk or negative impact that this technology can have?
Yes, but I would say it's still more social problem rather than technical problem. So there are a few problems we have now. The first is we discussed is a bias, and second thing is let's say big companies and silos. And this problem was just addressed by European Commission. So just a few months ago, they issued the European Commission Artificial Intelligence Act, bringing the categories of AI system, including unacceptable, high, minimum, and low risk, and also the system which should be completely prohibited, and systems should be bring very strict compliance. But currently, they actually is expanded with the two new documents, Digital Services Act and Digital Market Act, which actually focus on digital platforms and big companies and how they treat our players. So the objective of these documents actually they limit the absolute power of big tech. Then they just consume, destroy some startups, creating the complete monopoly in terms of a data access or particular solutions or particular research. So the main goal is to democratize this market, bring more accessibility not only to solutions, but to the research, to the data, to the medical assessment, to every stage. So as I know, this document target this problem. It's very good that policymakers actually understand that the problem is not just technical. It's about actually fair market. It's about fair players behind this system. So I think is the second problem we need to solve. So it's a fair competition and participation of people who really care about patients, about these communities. And the final risk is more for discussion. So during the UNESCO meeting, we raised another problem, which could be around misuse or creation cognitive silos. So what do I mean? So basically, specifically in terms of disabilities, when we try to completely replace people with technology, then child interact with the robot instead of actual classroom, there are risks. We actually eliminating this human interaction, and we basically changing the cognitive function of this person. It's still a big question how exactly these technologies will affect people in long term. And that's why one of the problems we try to raise is not just building technologies, but curriculums. How exactly these technologies should be used. Should be like a 30% of time for child, but another amount of time should be used for more human interaction with the family, with the other kids, with the classroom. So it's another question. But once again, it's not about technology, but it's about curriculums. And that's why some companies I had opportunity to work with, they position themselves not as a technology company, but learning companies, because they spend a lot of time to create these curriculums and right approach how to tell the educators, teachers, people behind classrooms, or parents how to use these technologies in proper way, avoiding these cognitive silos, avoiding misuse, because every technology can be used for good, but also it can be used for abuse, harassment, different type of a cognitive isolation, and so on. And also another thing, and we could add it to the level number 4, is a data privacy. So I raised this concern some time ago. So there were few cases then government just screen and parse the data from social media to learn about people with disabilities if they actually have a disability without any consent. So they basically take the data from your social account to check if you really have a disability and make decision about your pension and financial support without any consent. So it was like completely on their side. And we have a very big problem. So if we provide so many assistive technologies and tools which collect data from patients, from these people, we should create very clear rule about consent. Then if person can make decision, caregiver, other stakeholders, teachers should be involved in this process about decision and actual decision making in this process to avoid this stealing of data.
I wanted to ask you what you think about this project of Elon Musk, Neuralink.
Nobody asked for it. Do you know what's the difference? Majority of technologies I work with created by parents or patients or families or people who have a problem, they asking for solution, like my child has no limb and I need bionic limb, or my child is autistic, I need some kind of a social assistant. They're asking for solution, they describing the problem. We have like a parent counselor or supporting group or resource group, and they're asking what exactly we need to bring to these families. Nobody asks for thing then you add chip to your brain. Why? I don't understand. What type of problem we try to solve? It's the whole concept of entrepreneurship. We are solving problems. What the problem we try to solve? I don't understand.
I guess lastly, back to your UNESCO presentation that you sent us, you mentioned like future forms of learning interaction, like for example, the interaction between AI and individuals on the spectrum, which can bring, new forms of creativity, experiences based on these technologies, biofeedback, and some of this, can be defined as neurofuturism. So we wanted to know, like, if you could tell us more about this concept of neurofuturism and what it means to you.
Yes. So first of all, even though 99% of my work has been entrepreneur technologies and kind of a policymaker, at the same time, I'm an artist. I work a lot of my art projects, music, and I use technology to empower the vision of this art. And initially, the AI itself and different type of digital platforms itself were a big support for me. They really helped me to get access to some opportunities. And I also used these technologies to create some type of creative works, which now behind of many of these summits or festivals, because I used these tools to collect some knowledge, some ideas, some sketches, some mock-ups, and so on. So the idea of neurofuturism, then we can pair the robotic, the AI, and different type of platforms with the people with particular impairments to support them or empower completely new type of activities when we are using some superpowers of these people to create the new dimensions of a set for sensory, cognitive, or physical diversity. And we're trying to bring to the different type of festivals, exhibition, spaces is a kind of a new area for me, but I believe in the strong power of such approach because some people prefer to see the arts as a language and is specifically good for broader society because we're able to bring the message from this UNESCO presentation to the maybe policymakers or entrepreneurs or technologists. But for a broader society, I believe the arts are a very strong way to bring to tell the story of these people in both the struggles and challenges, but also unique superpowers and opportunities of this community.
We are currently at an art festival of a music and avant-garde music festival, and I heard you talk about a musician talking about biofeedback. I think it's NGC that's using biofeedback to record their brainwaves and create music without instruments. And would you consider this like also neurofuturism? Is that what you're talking about?
Yes, it's exactly what I'm talking about. So it's using biofeedback and similar technologies, your brainwave, in order to connect it with the painting, musical things, creating different type of landscapes. So yes, that's correct. And in this case, you can use some element of automation or distribute like human involvement, where you, let's say, bring 70% of a pattern and use some type of automation and or randomization bringing by the system or in different proportions. So it's like creating the symphony of experiences there. You bring the concept, the idea, but they using the machine adding some kind of randomization. It's similar like how rock bands existed from the beginning. So you're coming as the leader of this band, bring the idea, and these people bring some kind of randomization to your concept. So this machine concept is quite close using biofeedback and similar technologies.
Yes, thank you so much.
My name is Pelonomi Moiloa. I'm a she, her, though I also respond to Her Majesty and Your Highness. No, I'm joking. That's a joke. And I'm based in Johannesburg, South Africa. That's my primary operation space, with considerations for the rest of the African continent. And yeah, I'm a little bit scattered in a bunch of different directions that collectively kind of are heading towards the same place around connection and community. Much of the work that I may be known for is with my startup, Lelapa AI, where we have a focus around contributing to an observable uptick of the quality of life of Africans through enabling problem-solving Africans with AI technology, and in our case, with language technology for low resource or indigenous languages specifically. And that is what takes up most of my attention and most of my time. But I do have other passions that existed before Lelapa, and they are long-standing, forever ongoing passions that work with similar themes around connection and community and imagining a future that is a bit nicer for more people. So one of those is the Ruth First Memorial Trust, which is tied to a high school in Johannesburg, an all-girls high school. I went to that high school, and since my last year in that school, I was kind of the poster child for the announcement of this trust. And this trust is a scholarship fund to allow or to enable certain people to attend the school. So in Johannesburg, and I think in other areas of the world, often the people who are able to attend the school have to come from nearby where the school is to enable controls in and out of the school region, and to ensure that people within the region are able to go to a school near them. But in a place like South Africa, which has this very heavy spatial apartheid history, it means that there is legacies of that system left over, which means that these former good schools, which were formerly white schools, what we call Model C schools, then have limited access to communities outside of that. So the scholarship fund not only gives people the monetary access to be able to attend a relatively good public school, but they also increase the quota for attendees outside of the immediate school region. So I'm now a trustee of that fund, and it's a really incredible program because it also has a mentorship program for these girls, which I wish I had when I was younger. They get taught how to meditate and how to deal with anxiety and all of these really intricate and beautiful social issues. There's guidance around navigating through that, which is really beautiful, and why I'm so passionate about the program. And then outside of that, I used to be a banker, and not a banker. I used to work in the bank. That's where my efforts were being used. So of course I had to leaven that out with some other kind of initiative that was able to feed my soul and recover the sins of my actions. And so along with some community members within my now neighborhood, which we refer to as Park Brow. It's actually called Parktown, but it's neighboring one of the most notorious cities in Johannesburg, Hillbrow, which means it's surrounded by quite gregarious circumstances. We're a community of people coming together and experimenting with each other and thinking together about what community and connection means. And that has manifested in a number of ways and a number of projects. And the two that I am mostly involved in is with a coding academy for high school girls. That was primarily to try and correct some of the inconveniences I've experienced in my past of being the only girl in a coding school, or feeling like I don't belong there, or never thinking I was going to code again when here I am, and it is my life and my job. and opening up the opportunity of what technology can mean for young women and their futures and the future of the rest of the world when that perspective is considered. And then aside from the Coding Academy, we also have a community guerrilla vegetable garden. Yes, there was a point at some point last year where it was a very real fear that I was going to be arrested for growing vegetables. It didn't happen, which means I don't have that story to tell. But basically, we were a community garden that has taken over some space that legally does not belong to us, but it's a space of gathering and connection and community, and we're figuring out what that means and how we can make it work. But these are the areas of my life that interact with each other and that I'm involved in, that bring me lots of joy and a will to exist and participate with the future.
Well, thank you so much for sharing all this and for your work. The question I had for you was, what do you think are the potentially or currently harmful aspects of AI and new technologies?
You know, I used to be one of those people who went around wagging my finger at everybody around the harms of AI in 2018, 2019, when the threats were not as obvious within the common consciousness of people. And I've since retired from that role. And so I would like to implore people to not take my word for it, but also to go and seek out the people who have dedicated their lives and their careers to understanding these processes and communicating around them, especially in the case that this field in many ways was driven by, facilitated by, and really brought to the fore through the work of a lot of women of color. So Timnit Gebru, Abiba Barhane, Deborah Raj, and they should continue to remain the voice of these issues. In many ways, they've been removed from the conversation, when you have these official governing bodies who pretend that they haven't been doing all the hard work. So I would encourage people to continue to explore their investigations. My investigations, though, that have remained from my finger-wagging days are more particularly around the African context, and less so with the implications of AI, because, of course, yes, there's the bias issues and the ethical issues, and for me, I think there isn't enough of a focus on the intentions around technology and how it is created and the philosophies from where technology is created, that do not center the human, that do not center connection and intimacy and those kinds of experiences in ways that preserve our heritage and our culture and things that are meaningful to us. But there are other technological things that occasionally keep me up at night. One of those is around data extraction. I mean, we've had thousands of years of exploitation of the African continent. And I don't get how people don't recognize the pattern. Like, it is just so obvious to us, and yet very well-intentioned people just are unable to see the parallels between the extractive past of the African continent and the taking, and what is happening now with data, and specifically around language. We often get approached by big tech and their associates in terms of getting data from us in order to create models, in order to then sell the fruits of those models to us. And of course, always the data extraction process is an unfair one. So that for me is a very large concern, and one we're having to address, especially within the realms of the technological world being centered around like the warm fuzzies around open source, and how those warm fuzzies are not always warm fuzzies, because it's like open for who, and opening certain communities up to what. So that occupies a lot of my brain space at the moment, especially turning into capital machines ourselves. How do we relate to the communities from which we are taking from, and how do we remunerate them and ensure that they're part of the process and that they reap the benefits of the technology that we create, not just from an applications, but recognizing them as owners and creators of the technology as well, and just through their contribution. Then the other two areas are around the extraction of materials for the technologies that are primarily used in the first world. So, the copper that goes into the electric cars, the lithium that goes into the batteries for recharging, the cobalt or the magnesium or the titanium, all of those kinds of processes being exacerbated by this demand of new technology and new innovation in the first world, and how that then reflects on the extractive processes in the global south. And yeah, what is the last one's also super scary, and that is around like fake news and misinformation. It's been proven in the past about how it is used to delegitimize power structures, and Africa and the rest of the global south, South America as well, are very pertinent demonstrations of how external forces can manipulate power. And AI models and data can be used to facilitate and exacerbate that process, which for me is incredibly frightening. So those are the three areas of my concern. But there's plenty. Refer to the experts for those. Yeah.
So after going over those, I guess, with the work you're doing with the Lab AI, and with the Coding Academy, what are some solutions now to the things that are keeping you up at night? And for these things, like open source for who, and the idea of extraction and data mining, do you have any solutions that you are working on, especially following kind of the mission of, with Lelapa AI for Africans by Africans solving African problems? How do you see this all coming together and maybe not being all bad?
I really love your phrasing of solutions that you're working on. Because often I'm asked for solutions, I'm like, who do you think I am? I don't know the answer. But yes, there are things that we're trying to figure out, and a journey that we're on in terms of exploring the options of what is available to us and what might work. So with regards to, I think diversity and inclusion and representation is one of the ways. I think that often gets used as a scapegoat and as a tick box item with regards to saying that you're developing with the human in mind. But and I haven't quite developed the vocabulary to prove exactly how to do diversity and inclusion and human-centered design properly. I think one of the ways is in almost delegitimizing the mathematics and the statistics related to the model building process, and instead using a community and community feedback as the metrics to which our models should be measured. But in terms of human-centeredness and diversity-centered creation of AI tools, I think through the Coding Academy, through Lelapa, bringing people into the room, and not just them, but their ideals, their principles, their values, how they operate into the process is a core part of changing the hegemonic ways in which technology has been developed in the past. Non-deliberately, I think more deliberately, Lelapa is very much focused and centralized on an opposing idea to what is currently happening, and that's that idea of resource efficiency. So we find that development methods for AI have been quite wasteful. They're just limited resources, people, money, electricity and power and compute resources being thrown into huge machines that then aim to generalize over a range of problems. And for us, we're quite interested in exploring an alternative to that approach. When we say LLM, it's not large language model, it's little language model, and how can we put multiple little language models in community together in a distributed way in order to be able to address things more directly with less power resources, with less data resources, but in a way that genuinely meets the needs of the problem that we're trying to solve. And yeah, I think those ways specifically, in terms of the open source, that is a huge discussion we're having. Lelapa, along with Masakane, as well as other language startups on the continent, Nizan, which is based in Ethiopia, Ghana NLP. We're looking at ways to create, I don't know, like a federated union in order to come to a common consensus about how data will be exchanged with parties who could possibly benefit the data versus parties who contribute to the data and are able to benefit from that data from a community sense rather than a superficial capital one. What does that look like? Open source for who? So are there options for like tiered licensing of particular data sources and AI models dependent on the outcome of what you want to do or who you're providing a service for? So those are some of the things that we're thinking about exploring, but haven't yet come to a conclusion on what might be the best way.
Thank you very much for sharing all of that with us.
So thank you so much for having me.
Thank you very much, and thank you for staying. We are a bit behind schedule, so let's go back directly. And Luz, yeah, I give back the mic to you.
Well, first of all, I don't know if Agat, you would like to react to because it's the first time you see the material and the video. I don't know if you have any reaction or you would like me to go directly with a question for you.
I think it's quite important to say that as Neuroqueer collective, we chose the name not knowing that the term was coined by Yonah Walker, yeah, and the other researcher, and it was just because we thought that within our identities, neurodivergence and queerness are both very much connected and important parts of our identities, and then we learned about
yes, it was in the air maybe.
The idea.
I mean, as we were talking right now, the topic was really focused on AI and other new technologies. Is there something you'd wish that could be developed to support members of your community?
Okay, so yeah, today we discussed this with Yara when we were going to the panel. And from my side, I think my biggest problem is getting overwhelmed with social stimuli. So, for instance, there's this one episode of Black Mirror in which a man gets a restraining order from his wife and his child, and they are blocked in real life for him. So he doesn't see them. That's just static, and he can't hear them. So something like this, which would block just social stimuli from the environment, would probably, in many situations, be very helpful, especially for if I want to concentrate. Take part in a discussion with for 2 or 1 people and concentrate on them, and there is background social noise that would be very good to have. But we also came up with ideas like social interpretation, so interpreters and simulators of social interactions that would also help. I'm also an addict. 2 years in recovery from addiction from alcohol, and I was thinking that I take this as also part of neurodiversity. So I was thinking about this period of getting sober when the triggers are very, very overwhelming. So, for instance, if you could block any images of alcohol, for instance, from your site, that would also be beneficial. But we also came up with something that we could actually do within our collective. For instance, just actually recording a video with about going to, for instance, very big overwhelming post office in Warsaw. Yeah, so like showing you exactly what you have to do.
Yeah, so you could be prepared in a sense, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, really interesting ideas, and there are a few that also echoed with things that would be good for me as well. Could you tell us about what it means to be neuroqueer in Poland, and how does your organization impact and support neuroqueer people?
I mean, as you know, there were, Poland is quite a homophobic country, but still we are based in Warsaw, so we are quite privileged. So I would say I still think of myself as a first word queer. So yeah, and as you might probably assume, as an autistic, I was never very fond of nationality as a concept, and we are not within our collective. It doesn't make sense for us. So I would say we are still part of the general neuroqueer movement, or even, if we want to put it bluntly, just neurodivergent TikTok. Yeah.
That's interesting. That being said,
but can I also, sorry,
because
there was
exactly.
Another part of the...
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
I wanted to direct it to something you said, but I will do it later.
Okay. Yeah, but our collective started when we applied for a grant from a feminist fund, and we started sending accommodation accessories, so like weighted blankets, noise cancelling headphones, and other stuff that neurodivergent people could use. Of course, providing them for free to neuroqueer people who applied for it. But we also organized a summer camp, also free of charge for neurodivergent queers. Yeah.
And that is amazing. Yeah, the only thing I had in mind was really, you talked about the fact that Poland is an homophobic country, and I think Europe is really going in a fucking bad direction right now, and thinking about, yeah, facial recognition and blah, and then, you know, like being listed as queer in such a country, like it really can give... I mean, it scares me. Like, it's really Black Mirror without having an episode about it. Anyway, I really like the discussion we had before this panel to prepare it. There was something that you said about that summer camp, which is kind of providing offline time for our communities. And yeah, what is the purpose of these camps? Can you tell us more about it? And also what it means. What does it mean to offer offline time? And why do you think, or even do you think it's important for us neuroqueer people?
Okay, so I personally think of neurodiversity and queerness as in diversity of genders and sexualities as part of biodiversity. So I'm of the outdoor neuroqueers, so I really vibe with nature, and as my favorite drag queen Patty Gonia said, nature be gay. So, and I really feel that the nature is definitely very it just has this neuroatypical vibe for me. And we could also see this during our camp, that it was very easy for the people who took part in it to easily recover from social interaction when there's absolutely no urban noises around, and it's just nature. So the recovery time is much more quicker and effective this way. And also the nature offers a lot of very good stimuli, and so like visual stimuli, and also sound stimuli that's really soothing for me and a lot of queer people I know.
Waterfalls, birds, and so on and so forth. Maybe neurofuturism is actually a future without any technology. Sometimes I really dream about it. I don't know, how is it for you?
I was, for instance, thinking about using some sort of devices, like I would say, I don't know, helmet or something like this, that would block the noise of cars in the city, which would, of course, help me. But that is not the solution. This is like going into a very dystopian reality where we're just living in some sort of simulation but the real world is burning. Yeah, so I think the solution would be to get rid of the cars, not providing some sort of devices that would block their noise. Yeah.
Preach to that. And I think also going outside of capitalism, I think when I was listening to these interviews, having, talking about companies in silos and being the blocker of open data and open source and things like, I think life would be way much better without capitalism, yes.
Yeah, and if we're talking about AI, not the danger of AI being not really taking into account marginal perspectives, so minority perspectives, I think it's even a bigger issue because I don't know if you heard about a book called Invisible Woman by Carolina Cradio Perez. So right now the whole world is even designed without taking into the consideration the majority, which is women. So we are talking about queer and neuroatypical perspectives, which are quite marginal. But even so, women are not taken into account.
That is really true. There is a long way to go. I just watched the time, and we are actually slowly going to the Q&A time. But is there any last words you would like to add, some reaction before we dive into this Q&A?
Okay, so one thing that I wanted to, because I think Yonah was talking about ways in which we could include, in which technology could help us include people, neurodivergent people into workforce. But I think of course, as we mentioned, the problem is that corporations and so on, and governments. But I think there is one way that is already available for. There's a remote work, that online work that would make work job more inclusive and accessible for neurodivergent people, because it means less social interactions, but and also probably not so much controlled time because we are working in different time schedules. But still, the problem is that a lot of companies still have to have control over their workers, and so somehow make work very unpleasant. But the other thing is there are a lot of property owners, office property owners, that are really want to keep us in the office buildings.
Exactly, and I think we should tell that to fucking Elon Musk, like, I will cure your autism, but you have to come to the office, lol. Anyway, that's indeed a very important addition here. So yeah, I think we can slowly go to the Q&A part of the discussion. We will also actually have Yonah joining us online. And I think, again, I do a little sign to the people behind the window. Thank you so much, Alicia, for going there. Here we are. Hi, Yonah. Thank you for being with us today. Can you hear us?
Yes.
Amazing. I think we have a bit of delay, but we can hear you, which is pretty amazing. So yeah, this is the Q&A time now. Does any one of you in the room have a question? If so, you can wave, and we will bring the mic. I also have some questions on a piece of paper if needed. Okay, we have a question. If you can share maybe your name before asking the questions as well as your pronouns, that would be amazing.
Hi, my name is Saturn. Pronouns are she, her, they, them, fe, fer. And my question is, do you think AI might kill social media in the near future?
Could you elaborate that? In what way?
I mean, what you're talking about with the phishing for all the data and stuff is quite scary, but I think a mix of like what our online presence might be for that, mixed with the fact that we're not going to be able to tell what's a bot and what's a human in the near future, and everything's going to be over amplified of even from cyberbullying to like making videos of people and all of this stuff, and there might be ways to like facial recognition to stop things going out, but I just think whether you just are never going to know in the near future if you're talking to a human or not, plus all of the other dangers that might come with it. Are we just going to go, boop, bye, not fun no more? Yeah.
Yeah, maybe we can also ask, does it kill it or does it make it a nightmare on Earth? Basically. Okay, yes. Does one of you want to start answering this question?
Yes. So first of all, I would love to relate both to this question and your remark regarding the companies. So for me, the problem is not just capitalism, but the, let's say, too much power in disproportion of power. And the same with regulation of social networks. And as we have more technologies which amplify cyberbullying, harassment, abuse, yes, I completely agree. We just need more competition in this field of the people who build these social networks. If we will be able to decentralize this market, we'll be able to bring more justice, more responsibility and accountability. If not, I completely agree, we can expect some kind of a nightmare in terms of how these biases, these scenarios of a misuse, scenarios of a social attack, disinformation, misinformation can be used in the wrong way. So it's really not about regulation of AI, but about regulation of the platforms. And that's why I'm really happy about recent move from European Commission in terms of digital services and digital market acts, which regulate not just AI, but platforms itself and limit monopolies and how they compete.
Yeah, thank you. You wanted also to answer the question, Agat, I think.
I would suppose that, first of all, first it will kill influencers. Yeah, because I think it's going to be a nightmare to watch people selling stuff which are with people who are AI generated, I guess. But I was thinking, because my social media is like my in real life friends, activists and cats, and I was thinking I don't have a problem with following AI generated cat. It will not ruin the joy.
That could be cute indeed. Thank you very much for your answers, the two of you. Do we have any other question in the room? Nope. Do one of you have a question? No? Okay, I have one. I think today we have talked a lot about the social problem that we have behind AI and the fact that all these social issues have been coded within AI. And I've heard a lot of people saying we have to start from scratch again and rebuild everything. And I've heard some other people saying, oh, actually we should start with the data that we have and we should just like enrich them and make them more complete so that we have something that really represents what the world is. The question that I had was, in the end, in your experience, Yonah, maybe, what have you seen companies doing and you think like, oh, that is a good policy, we should replicate that in the future? Is it one, the other, one and the other, or a mix of both? Like, yeah, how do you think about this?
Yes. So first of all, before I also would love to refer to the previous question and depth of the influencers. So recently, United Nations conducted the research asking children, what do they think about the robots? Do they want robots look like people or more like a robot, so we can distinguish them? In most cases, children answered they don't want to see robots as humanoid, but rather just as a robots. They would love to see people are people and robots are robots. They don't want to replace humanity with the technology. This is what new generation answered. And I hope that technology amplify existing influencers. And regarding your questions, so I see a lot of good things in my area of autism. And what companies are doing, they bringing not just a representation, but ownership and agency. So many of the companies who build AI for neurodivergent workplaces, robotics, they are owned by people who are neurodivergent, or they have team members who are neurodivergent, or they have a specific family or parent resource group which are actively involved in adoption and building curriculums and getting more feedback and building the feedback loop between the child, between the family, between a neurodivergent individual. So it's not enough just to bring representation. You need to create these technologies owned, presented, and then these people actually have an agency and the whole ownership of this community. That's what equality is about, essentially. And hopefully I see it, at least for startups, at least for emerging companies. I don't see it for bigger companies, unfortunately, but hopefully it will happen later.
Yeah, that's really a hope. I've been working in startups myself in the past, and I was always very annoyed when I was hearing the CEOs of these companies saying that they were caring about the 80% of the population, because this is the people who can buy, and the 20 can go just dance on their heads. So I think, yeah, answering by saying actually we center the marginalized communities, and then we kind of open it up. Like, I'm pretty sure that most of the things that are developed by and for the communities you are in contact with then can beneficiate anyway also the bigger majorities. Do you have concrete example of that where a company decided to create something for marginalized people and then in the end the majority was like, hey, that's cool, let's do it this way as well?
Yes. So first of all, what you're talking about is called assistive pretext. So innovation created for a disabled or marginalized community can benefit everyone. And in the past, SMS was created for people with a hearing impairment, and now you have this text messages for all of your smartphones. So there are many examples. So for instance, when you build social robotics for kids with autism, many of such projects now becoming of a broader market of robotics for mental health or emotional training. And there are existing companies which actually doing this. More importantly, sometimes such companies bringing other cases of diversity and intersectionality. So one of the cases is a company, Robokind. They built robotics for autism, and initially, the robot was called Milo, and they had like a European look Milo, and now they have a black Milo, and they bring different type of intersectionality, presenting different type of communities, saying that autism is intersectional, is the spectrum, not only in terms of autism itself, but also in terms of gender, ethnicity, geography. And in this way, they create a different like a type of a product. So is another example. So yeah, it's really happening. And actually, I expect much more examples. So for instance, we have AI platforms helping to create better accommodation solutions for people with autism. In the same platforms or the same algorithms can be used for different type of disability or a specific accommodation for refugees, for immigrants. So then you need to accommodate some specific group to the workplace. Once again, many cases related to mental health, emotional training, children development, solutions which can be used for dyslexia, they can be used for general reading improvement. Solutions used for a hearing or visual impairment can be used for different type of trainings and so on. We had case, then company created rehabilitation solution based on exoskeleton for people with a neuromuscular disorder, and now it's used for sport to support people who involved in extreme type of sports. So there are many, many examples.
Yeah, thank you very much for sharing these examples. I had a sign about the fact that we are about to finish. I will have maybe just one last question for you, Agat, and my question is, and you don't have to answer because it's a big one, I realize, but do you have any hopes for the future? Like, talking about all these things for an hour and a half, is there like something where you just say, this is what I want to see tomorrow, or even today? What would be your neurofuturism?
Yeah, recently I was thinking about a specific app that would somehow connect all the neuroqueers, and it would have to be global, because I can see that there are a lot of neuroqueers who want to escape the system, and I mean all the oppressive systems as in capitalism and governments and so on, but we would have to connect with each other to build like alternative communities. Yeah.
Yeah, it reminds me actually the queer community, not only the neuroqueer, but like higher level, that some people actually connect on the dating apps, which names I won't give. But yeah, that sounds really good. Thank you very much, Yonah, again, for sharing all your knowledge. To you also, Agat, and to everyone you saw on the screen. Everyone from Unsound, whose name I won't have the time to list because they are all extremely amazing. And thank you to you all in the room for staying for so long. Very much appreciated. Now I think it's time to have a bit of food before the concert. Enjoy. Thank you very much.